part of your responsibility is to fill in some of the gaps that are given. This is to test your ability to follow. So take the sermon outline and see how we can do. We continue to be talking about Christian giving. Christian giving. But if you are visiting with us today, we want you to know that we have been considering this subject of Christian giving. It is because the Bible has a lot to say about the whole subject of money. It has a lot to say because our correct handling of it leads us to a good relationship with Him. Our mishandling of our resources distorts our relationship with Him. And today I am making a very bold, and I want to call it a very bold assertion. The assertion is that when it comes to Christian giving, God looks at what we keep for ourselves more than He does on what we actually give. Did you just hear me? God looks more on what we keep for ourselves, or just what we keep, than He does on what we give. What we give and what we keep for ourselves reveal a lot about our faith. Yebo Baba. It's coming. Hey, okay. There are some who still don't have up there you have the outline? Okay. I don't know what happened there in the West. There should be sufficient for everyone. I know that some who have already abandoned walking with their pens will struggle. Please borrow a pen from someone and so forth. Okay. Now everyone has an outline, huh? Okay. This distribution of the outline is causing a lot. When I started talking, I said I am making a very bold assertion. I'm making a very bold statement that when it comes to giving, the Lord looks more on or at what we keep than He does on what we actually give. And I would like to illustrate. My pocket, imagine this is my wallet. I dip my hand in my pocket and there are dollars in there. Well, I have $20. I also have $1. So I'm coming to give. I take my dollar and I put my $20 back and I drop it in here. Whether it is clean or dirty or whatever, I drop it in. The Lord is looking at what I have kept. Because what I have kept is saying a lot about my faith, my love, my obedience. It says a lot about my focus. In the same way, when I dip into my pocket and I have $20 and I have $1, and I take the dollar and I put it in my pocket, but I take the 20 and I put it in the offering bag, the Lord is still looking at what I keep. Because what I have kept for myself tells more about my faith that God will meet my need. It tells a lot about my love. I love the Lord more than I love myself. It tells a lot about my obedience. But also it tells a lot about where my focus is. Is my focus on me, or is it on the cause or on the Lord? That is the basis of my assertion with the statement, the Lord looks. Now, thank you. This very assertion is evident in Jesus' acknowledgement of the widow who gave her only 2 coins. But let's talk about the context of the passage that Brother Terence read for us, because there is a given context. It is always important for us to be within the context. So, the temple in Jerusalem had several court areas, with the treasury being just inside the court of women. There were the outside court, the court of the Gentiles, then the court of the women, not the inner court where only the male Jews would go. So that's where the treasury was. The treasury was a chest or a wooden box which was placed out there where everyone could access, so that everyone can give, as much as they excluded some people from coming closer into the inner court, but they wanted everyone to give. So they put it out there, not in the court of the Jews, because then only the Jews could get to give. Jesus has had a series of confrontations with the religious leaders of his day. And so he sat opposite the treasury. He sat opposite the treasury and observed how people were giving. He was not just by the treasury, but he sat opposite there, seeing all these people coming to give, how they were doing it. So he saw 2 types of givers. There were those rich who wanted to be noticed, and so they flouted about what they were giving, including a little boast of what they were giving. But he also saw the widow who was trying to be inconspicuous, unnoticeable, who was trying to be almost hiding, but still going to give. It is interesting how Mark and Luke use the example of the poor widow as a stark contrast to the scribes and the Sadducees. So you read Mark chapter 12, verse 41 to verse 44, and of course Luke chapter 21, verse 1 to verse 4. So we do know that in one of his scathing attack on the scribes and the Pharisees, Jesus had labeled them as hypocrites. Wow. Sons of hell, blind guides, serpents, a brood of vipers. They were hypocritical, they were loveless, they were uncaring, proud and arrogant. They kept people from entering heaven, you see. They robbed widows. They created self-righteous disciples. They were liars. They failed to keep the laws of God on justice, mercy, and faithfulness. They were robbers. They were self-indulgent. They plotted murder. If you read Matthew chapter 23, this is the description of the scribes and the Pharisees. They are the ones who were boasting about how they were throwing in their big monies there. And Jesus is seeing them. But he also sees the widow. Between the religious leaders and the widow, Jesus pays attention to the widow. For what the Lord looks for is different from what men look for. What the Lord looks for is different from what men look for. So here is Luke chapter 21, verse 1 to 4 again. Jesus looked up as he sat opposite the treasury. He looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the offering box. And he saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. And he said, truly, I say to you, this widow has put in more than all of them. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. Verse 4 would correspond with verse 43 and verse 44 of Mark chapter 12, where Jesus, here we just hear in Luke saying, he said, but Mark tells us that he even called the disciples and said, do you see what has been happening? This widow has given more than all of them. Why? They were giving a little bit out of their abundance, but she gave all that she had to live on. Friends, why? Because the Lord looks at what we keep. And what we keep tells us about our faith. So when we give, the Lord looks for faith. The Lord looks for faith. That's what he is looking for. Is there faith as you do this? In Luke's context, remember that a couple of weeks ago, Jesus had entered Jerusalem for the first time. And when he entered that same temple, he was shocked and upset because of what he saw. He didn't see people worshiping God. He saw men and women making money in the temple, and it infuriated him. That's why he even made a whip and drove them out and turned their tables. Now, in this particular passage that we are looking at, Jesus sees what is supposed to look like when people worship God with everything, to include their money. The rich were coming by and making a spectacle about the money that they were dropping in the box. The big issue was they were even making a spectacle about it. Jesus notices from a distance a poor widow. She only has 2 pennies. She takes out both She drops them in the offering box and walks away. And walks away. As Jesus considers her action, he commends her keeping nothing for herself. Her giving was sacrificial, for it was hurting. Sacrificial giving is hurting. What this woman just gave was everything that she owned. Verse 4 says, "For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on." You see, this widow was an example of true faith. This widow was an example of true faith. Faith is trust. Faith is devotion. Faith is reverence. Faith is worship. She gave all that she owned and had to live on in an act of true worship, trusting God for her needs. In other words, she basically became the best example of living Matthew chapter 6 verse 33. "But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." She became an example of Isaiah 26 verse 3. "Thou wilt keep in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee." Godliness and contentment is great gain. 1 Timothy 6 verse 8. You see, the wealthy people had plenty of money, and they were giving plenty of money. It was big, it was huge compared to this woman. However, by percentage, it was nothing compared to what this widow gave. By percentage, for example, these big givers, these big, those who were rich, if they even gave 1%, it looked like a mountain compared to the amount that the widow gave. But it was 0.000 whatever percent of what they had. Compared to this one, who dumped in everything that she had, she gave 100%. How do you then say she has not given less? She has given less when she gave all that she had. Wow. That was true faith. I'm sure after dumping all of her savings into the offering bag, she went home with a question that you and I would ask if you were to empty your bank account and give to the church today. I'm sure you would ask, where do I get the money to buy food? How will I pay the rent? I need money to pay for hospital bills and fuel and gas and you name it, school fees. Where does it come from? And this is why some people have actually thought this woman is foolish. And maybe some of us would say she was truly stupid. While we may think that Jesus saw an impressive act of faith in her, she reasoned that without the Lord's provision and protection, she would be worse even if she held on to her savings. She placed her faith in God. This woman personally embarrasses me by her faith. I don't know about you. But if I want to live there, can I live like her? No. I do all the calculations together with you. And I'm going, oh Lord, but you know, Lord, you know, Lord. Didn't you say that you even have supplied for me through this means? So why? Why? Yes, Lord, I know you are looking at what I am keeping. I know you are looking at what I'm keeping. But Lord, yeah, the cause that I'm keeping it for, it's a good cause, Lord. It's a good cause. This woman embarrasses me. This woman makes me a sinner. But that is true. All giving, no matter what it is ultimately an act of faith. Actually, it is not just an act of faith, it is an act of worship. You see, the majority of your time and money goes to what you worship. If you worship food, it goes there. If you worship television, it goes there. If you worship sports, it goes there. If your time and your resources will go to what you worship. If you worship fashion, there are never enough dresses and whatever in your wardrobe you try to go through. No, I don't like this one. But you don't want to give it away anyway. You still keep them and they continue to collect. If you worship cars, it goes there. The cars. So the Lord looks. If you worship power, if you worship control, your time, your resources will go there. If you worship pleasure, it goes there. Yeah, it's a long time since I traveled. I was talking with my wife that we need somehow to travel. But when you want to travel, it's money. And you people in the social media, when you travel, you publish it and you make me so jealous of you. Lord, that is the problem. So you begin to go, let's save. The energy, the money will go there. If you worship education, it goes there. If you worship your children, it goes to them. Parents, I also have children. We know what we have gone through. But that's where the energy and the money will go. So the Lord not only looks at what you give, He looks at what we keep, because He's looking for faith. Does what you give show faith? Secondly, He is looking for this big word called love. He's looking for love. But she, out of her poverty, put in all she owned, all she had to live on. From a distance, Jesus observes the super rich at the offering box. They are coming in and dropping lots of money. But by percentage, like I said, the amount is nothing. On the other hand, the widow who practically has nothing has just given everything. She just demonstrated an act of love. You see, whatever has your money has your heart. We learned a week ago, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You see, how do we judge people who are pious? That's too big a word for now. People who have true faith. How do we see that this is a real righteous person? Well, people judge when it comes to giving by the amount that they give. But this is the very reason why the Lord rebuked favoritism for the wealthy in James chapter 2, verse 1 to verse